Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel Biology Made Easy. So in the previous lecture we studied about cardiac cycle, systole, diastole and as to how the heartbeat functions. So today we're going to study about electrocardiogram. Okay, before we jump to the main topic, we have to understand why are we studying electrocardiogram. First and foremost reason is because ECG is one of the cardiac investigations that help you to understand if there is a blockage, if there is something wrong with your pacemaker, or if there is something wrong with your heart. Okay. Also, another reason is you will be able to understand that we've studied in the cardiac cycle what amount of time does atrial systole takes place, what amount of time does ventricular systole takes. So all this will be penned down, all this electrical activity is penned down in electrocardiogram, so you'll be able to relate it further in terms of time frame. Okay, so also I would like you to ask to please subscribe to my YouTube channel and look into my previous videos if you have not understood any of the topics that we are discussing today. To start with, today we are studying electrocardiogram. Okay, electrocardiogram or graph. It's also called as electrocardiograph. Okay, so let us simplify and understand. Let us split this. Electro means something related to electricity or electrical activity. This one here relates to your heart. And when you pen it down or when you form a proper graph out of it, when you have a chart which depicts the electrical activity of your heart, that particular chart is called as electrocardiogram or electrocardiograph. Okay, so basically electrocardiogram or electrocardiograph is graphical representation of the electrical activity of the heart. Okay, so this is one of the very oldest method discovered in early 20s and early 20th century, and I think the Dutch physiologist William Einthovan was the first person to form the first electrocardiogram. Okay, so how do we actually do it? So before we understand that, we have to understand two major things, that there is something called an ECG electrode. ECG electrode will be the connective pad, okay, that you're going to attach to your skin to read the electrical activity. Okay, and then these pads or these electrodes are ultimately going to give rise to ECG leads. Okay, and these leads will be basically generated after the computer analyzes the electrical activity and pen it down in form of a graph. Okay, so this is the major difference, guys. Do not get confused between leads and electrodes. So there are 10 major electrodes that we use. There are 6 chest electrodes and there are 4 limb electrodes, and these electrodes basically generate 12 leads. How? We're going to see now. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to draw what I'm actually drawing, an outline sketch of a man or of a human rather. Okay, so as I mentioned, the leads or the electrodes that we're going to discuss first. So there's one electrode, and also always remember this, guys, that whenever I'm drawing any structure or any structure related to your organ or related to your body, so when I draw it, this is my right. Okay, as you can see in the video, this is my right. So this side of the board will be right. It's usually opposite when it comes to mathematics, but it's like this when it comes to biology. So right will be the right side and left will be the left side. So this one here is going to be your first lead or electrode placed on your right arm or right upper limb. Okay, this one here is left arm or left upper limb, left leg and right leg. However, the limb or the electrode here is usually a neutral one because there is very less electrical activity. As you can imagine, the heart is slightly tilted towards your left. Okay, so when I say it's slightly tilted towards your left, the electrical activity also will be felt in your left leg, but not in the right leg. So right leg acts like an earthing wire, or you can say a neutral electrode. Okay, so these are your 4 electrodes that are placed. Now we'll understand the leads. Also, we'll come to that in some time. So you have to understand the leads. How are these leads generated? Okay, this one, there are 3 major bipolar leads. Okay, when I say bipolar, it means that there are 2 poles required. There are 2 poles required to generate that lead. That's why I'm calling it bipolar. And Einthovan was the first one to use 3 bipolar leads, 1, 2 and 3, to generate the first electrocardiograph. However, now the electrocardiogram is more advanced and we use furthermore leads. Okay, so the basic leads I'm going to tell you. Here there is one electrode, here there is one. Okay, they are forming a triangle. This particular triangle is called as Einthovan's triangle. You can also make a note, guys, if you want to keep in mind to understand it better. Now, what happens exactly is there are 3 terminal ends to this triangle. So what actually happens, this machine, this electrocardiogram or this electrocardiogram machine, what it does, it splices the information received here and combines the information. So the machine itself is very smart to do this. It combines the information, computed information, and gives us the view from the top. So this is the first view that we get to the heart. Now also one more fact, that in this triangle we are assuming that the heart is placed somewhere in between here. Okay, your heart is placed somewhere in between here. This is the first lead that we are getting, formed by the splicing of the information by this electrode and this electrode, which is your right arm and left arm. Now similarly, right arm and left leg, some of the information spliced and computed and produces your second lead. So this is lead 2. It gives us the view of the heart from here. And this one, the third lead. These were the basic bipolar leads that were used by the Einthovan. Okay, so 1, 2 and 3, these are bipolar leads. Now similarly, now in advanced electrocardiograph, you get to see unipolar lead. What happens here is basically this electrode itself is going to give out some information, receive some deflection and give out some information to the computer and produce unipolar leads. Why I'm calling it unipolar? Because there's only one pole required. For the entire deflection is dependent on this one pole. That's why I'm calling it unipolar. I'm again and again using this term deflection. What exactly it is? So these electrodes have some polarity. They have some voltage or they have some potential already present. The sum of the vector, the sum of these 3 vectors is equal to 0. Okay, so it's always 0 potential when applied. Now when the electrical activity happens, so imagine if I take the predetermined polarity is these electrodes, suppose this one is 3 volts, this one is 3 volts and this one as well is 3 volt. Now from here is the origin point, that's why the sum of the vector is going to be 0. You have to understand this much basic physics for this, that vectors have direction involved when it comes to magnitude. Okay, they have direction and magnitude both. So here the direction magnitude might be 3, but the direction is the initial point itself is the final point, so it becomes 0. Okay, Now what happens if there is an electrical activity generated at this end? There will be some certain deflection received by this electrode. Okay, there will, because it might change, say about from 3 it might become 3.2 volt. So similarly, this particular change is called deflection. Okay, deflection in voltage. Now this was the basic that we looked at. Let's understand what do you mean by electrical axis. So based on these leads, we determine electrical axis of the heart. Okay, so now let us understand what exactly electrical axis means. Okay, so all these leads that we studied in the previous diagram, we're going to understand how they help us to understand the electrical axis and what exactly it means. Okay, so remember we studied the lead 1 that gives us the view of the heart from top. Then we studied another unipolar lead. This one here, which was on the right arm, is called as augmented vector right. And this one here, what we studied was augmented vector left. Okay, and another one here we studied was augmented, this was lead 2, and we also looked at lead 3. Another lead that we looked at was augmented vector front. So these are the names given to the unipolar leads. Okay, how do we name them? Augmented vector left, right and front, or foot, because it is present in your foot. Now here, while determining the electrical axis, you must have seen that I'm ignoring the right leg completely because there's no electrical activity, it's neutral. Okay, now let us draw or extend these vectors. So while extending, we are going to look at an interesting fact here. Once you start extending these vectors, you will observe that on extension, these vectors form a difference of 30-degree angle each and completes the entire 360-degree angle or axis. So your heart is exactly present here, and to understand this is how the electrical activity of the heart looks like. Okay, so that is why we are naming this particular diagram as electrical axis of heart. Now this was about the planar view. Okay, all we looked at was the planar view or the frontal view of the heart. These leads are helping us to look at the heart from the one plane. Now let's look at the heart from here, the horizontal view, which is right through the heart. Okay, how are we going to look at it? Like, we are going to place 6 different leads, which are termed from V1 to V6. Okay, V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, V6. And how are they placed? Now look at me. So here is going to be your first V1, just next to your sternum. Okay, the rib cage where it divides. 1, 2. It's pretty difficult to understand it like this. Let me draw it for you. So suppose this is your heart. Okay, this is your heart. So here we are placing V1. This is your V2. V1, V2. Okay. Now here is your V6 and your V5. V5 and V6. Now here, exactly here, lies your V3 and V4, but V4 is above V3. Okay, so V4 is above V3, and then V5 and V6. V6 is somewhere far, but it is near your rib cage. Okay, so this was about the positioning of the chest leads. Chest leads are also called as precordial leads. Okay, now we shall look at the normal ECG curve. Okay, another fact before we go ahead. Another fact we have to keep in mind is that this myocardial depolarization, okay, actually depends on which lead is sensing the depolarization. For example, I will tell you something here, that the sinoatrial node, for example, sinoatrial node generates its first impulse in this direction. Okay, here is the heart. Imagine this is your heart. So this is the direction that it is generating its first impulse. Okay, now remember the leads. When lead 2 or lead AVF is sensing it, okay, there will be a positive deflection. So there will be a wave formed, okay, which will be positive. So this will sense positive. At the same time, if you see AVR, okay, augmented vector right, sensing it, because it is right opposite to the direction of the electrical activity, the wave generated will show a negative deflection. And if a very irrelevant lead is sensing this, suppose this one here, or probably lead 1 is sensing this, then you're going to see an isoelectric line, a straight line. That means no electrical deflection is measured by this lead. So guys, when we talk about a normal ECG wave, we have the sum of all these leads. Okay, so the computer analyzes all these deflections and produces the final wave that is inked on the paper, okay, that we study. So this was it in the part 1 of the electrocardiogram, because we have understood the entire principle here. Now exactly how the ECG wave looks like and what are the waves representing is what we're going to look into our next video or in the coming lecture. Okay, so please do subscribe to my YouTube channel, Biology Made Easy, if it is helping you to understand the biology concepts. And also please wait for my next video, which will be about the ECG wave and the representation, also relating it to the time frame of the cardiac cycle. Thank you.